"Where is your brother?" His voice was so cold that my soul trembled. I stood at the doorway and in front of me was him, Cain Volkov, the same man my twin brother Elliot was supposed to marry. But Elliot had run away 2 hours ago, leaving me with an empty house and a crumpled note that read, "I can't do this. You handle it." Handle it? Me? I was just a graphic designer who lived peacefully in my small apartment. I had nothing to do with Mafia politics. But now this world had arrived at my doorstep and I couldn't run from it. Cain took a step forward. His dark gray suit fit his body perfectly, and on his sharp jawline was an old scar that ran from his left cheekbone down to his neck. His eyes, steel blue, cold, calculated, stared at me as if he were looking at prey. "So you thought I would just leave quietly," he said, adjusting his coat button. "Your brother has insulted me, and the Volkov family does not tolerate insults." My throat went dry. I knew Cain wasn't just a mafia lord in name. He had a reputation, ruthless, cold-blooded, and a man who showed no hesitation in eliminating his enemies. And now he stood before me, filling my living room with his dangerous presence. I'm not Elliot," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He ran away. I don't know where he is." Cain took a long breath, then slowly removed his gloves. "I know you're not Elliot." There was no emotion in his voice. "You're Randy, the younger twin. I know all of this." He locked his eyes with mine and took another step forward. Now he was so close that I could feel the scent of his cologne. Dark, woody, suffocating. "But the deal was with your family, and until someone stands at the altar in front of a Volkov, the deal remains incomplete." My heart began pounding wildly. So what do you want?" He looked at me, and for a second I swear a faint smirk appeared on his lips. "Simple. If Elliot can't come, then you will. You'll take his place." He paused and touched my shoulder deliberately, possessively. "You'll come with me. Your parents' debt, your house, your business, everything is under my control." I was stunned. "What? I can't marry you." "You have no choice, Randy." He said my name so casually as if it already belonged to him. "Your brother abandoned me. Your parents spent my money. If you refuse," he adjusted his coat button again, deliberately, "then I will destroy your entire family. Understand?" My hands started shaking. I knew he was serious. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I looked around my small living room, the place where I used to sketch designs late at night, where I felt safe. Now it felt like a prison. Cain stood there, unmoving, his presence dominating every inch of space. He wasn't just threatening me with words. His entire being radiated danger. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he assessed every flicker of emotion on my face. He was studying me, learning me, owning me before I had even agreed. "I need time to think," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "You have until morning," Cain replied, checking his watch with casual precision. 6 a.m. sharp. "My men will come for you. Pack light, you won't need much. Everything you require will be provided." He turned toward the door, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "And Randy, don't even think about running. I have eyes everywhere. Your brother made that mistake. I suggest you don't follow his example." The door closed behind him with a soft click, but the weight of his words lingered in the air like smoke. I collapsed onto my couch, staring at the ceiling. How had my life spiraled so completely out of control in just a few hours? This morning I was worried about client revisions and meeting deadlines. Now I was being forced into a marriage with a man who could ruin lives with a single command. I grabbed my phone and called Elliot. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. He had probably thrown away his SIM card by now, disappearing into whatever new life he had planned. Meanwhile, I was left to clean up his mess. Again. Story of my life. Elliot got the attention, the praise, the easy path. And I got the leftovers, the burdens, the impossible choices. My parents didn't call. They didn't check if I was okay. They just expected me to fix this, to sacrifice myself for the family name. The same family that had never truly seen me. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump. Was it Cain's men coming early? Was someone watching me? By the time dawn broke through my curtains, I had made my decision. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no other option. Refusing meant condemning my parents to ruin, possibly worse. And despite everything, I couldn't carry that guilt. At exactly 6 a.m. there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find two large men in black suits, their expressions blank and professional. "Mr. Randy?" one of them asked. I nodded. "Please come with us. Mr. Volkov is waiting." I grabbed the small duffel bag I had packed. Some clothes, my laptop, a few personal items. As I walked out of my apartment, I took one last look at the space that had been my sanctuary. I didn't know when or if I would ever return. The next day, I sat in Cain's black SUV, watching city lights fade behind us. His driver remained silent in the front, and Cain sat beside me, typing messages on his phone. He hadn't looked at me once, as if I wasn't even there. I stared out the window, trying to calm my racing heart. Everything had happened so fast. This morning I was making coffee in my apartment, thinking about design project deadlines, and now I was traveling to a Mafia boss's estate. My parents hadn't spoken to me when I called them. They just said, "Randy, please. This is for the family." Family, the one that always considered me second choice, the one that always preferred Elliot. "Keep staring out there and you'll get a neck-ache," Cain suddenly said, without looking up from his phone. I turned toward him. I was thinking about whether this is real or just some nightmare. He finally put his phone aside and looked at me. His eyes held that same coldness, but there was something else too. Curiosity? "This is very real. And the sooner you accept it, the better it will be for you." He interlocked his fingers and leaned toward me. "Besides, you're lucky. Many people would consider this a privilege, becoming part of the Volkov family." "Privilege?" I let out a bitter laugh. "I don't love you, and you don't love me. So what is this marriage? A joke?" "This marriage is a deal," Cain cut me off, his voice carrying finality. "Love has no place here. You'll live in my house, follow my rules, and to the outside world, you'll be my husband. That's all you need to understand." He paused, then softened his voice slightly. "But if you try to run or betray me, remember, Randy, I won't forgive your brother, and I won't forgive you either." My throat tightened. I couldn't say anything, just folded my hands in my lap. The drive took nearly an hour, taking us far from the city into countryside I barely recognized. Trees lined the road, thick and dark, creating shadows that felt ominous. Cain made several phone calls during the journey, speaking in clipped, authoritative tones. I caught fragments: "Shipment confirmed," "Security doubled," "Meeting postponed." Each phrase reminded me of the world I was entering, a world where violence and power were currencies. When we arrived at his estate, I was left in shock. This wasn't a house. It was a fortress. High walls surrounded the property, armed guards stationed at every gate, and a mansion so large that my entire apartment building could fit inside it. Fountains sparkled in the afternoon sun. Manicured gardens stretched in perfect symmetry, and marble pathways led to the grand entrance. Everything screamed wealth and power. Cain stepped out of the car, and I followed. Guards saluted us, and an older man, probably the butler, waited at the door. "Welcome home, sir," he said to Cain, then cast a neutral glance at me. "And this gentleman?" "This is Randy," Cain said smoothly. "My future husband. Give him all the facilities I use. But," he looked at me, his voice lowering, "give him his own room. Separate from mine." The butler nodded and led me inside. The interior was even more impressive. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, paintings that looked like they belonged in museums. We climbed a grand staircase and walked down a long corridor before stopping at a door. "This will be your room, sir," the butler said, opening it. When I entered my room, I was amazed. It was bigger than my entire apartment. A king-sized bed with silk sheets, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in my size, an attached bathroom with a jacuzzi and marble counters. The balcony overlooked the entire estate, offering a view that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. But all of this felt hollow to me. This was just a golden cage, no matter how luxurious. I sat on the bed and buried my face in my hands. "What am I doing?" I whispered to myself. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. The butler entered carrying a tray. "Dinner will be served at 8, sir," Mr. Volkov expects you to join him. Please dress appropriately, formal attire is in the closet. He set down the tray which held tea and small sandwiches, then left as quietly as he had come. I looked at the clothes in the closets. Designer labels I'd only seen in magazines. Everything in my exact size, chosen without my input. It was clear Cain had been planning this, preparing for my arrival even before I'd agreed. The thought made me uncomfortable. How long had he known Elliot would run? Had this been his plan all along? At 8 o'clock sharp I made my way downstairs, wearing a simple but elegant black shirt and trousers. The dining room was enormous, with a table that could seat 20 people. Cain sat at the head, already eating. He glanced up when I entered. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair beside him. I sat down, and immediately staff appeared, serving course after course. The food was exquisite, but I could barely taste it. Cain ate in silence, occasionally checking his phone. The quiet was suffocating. "Why separate rooms?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. "If we're supposed to be married, wouldn't that look suspicious?" Cain set down his fork and looked at me. "Because I don't trust myself around you yet," he said bluntly. "And I don't trust you. This arrangement needs boundaries. Once we're officially married, we'll share a room when necessary, for appearances, but until then, you keep your distance." His honesty was jarring. "So I'm just a prisoner here. You're my responsibility," he corrected. "There's a difference. You're free to move around the estate, use any facilities, but you don't leave the property without my permission. And you don't contact anyone from your old life without clearance. Those are the rules." I wanted to argue, to fight back, but what would be the point? I had no leverage, no power here, so I just nodded and continued eating in silence, feeling the weight of my new reality settle over me like a heavy blanket. 2 days later, Cain decided to take me to his business meeting. "But I'm not involved in your work," I protested as he handed me a sharp black suit. The suit was perfectly tailored, expensive fabric, definitely way beyond my budget. "You're my property now, Randy." He looked at me, his voice carrying finality. "And every member of the Volkov family knows their place. So put on this suit and come with me quietly. This will be your first introduction to my world." I put on the suit, struggling with the buttons. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize who I saw. This wasn't the Randy who created designs, who sat in coffee shops with his laptop, who was happy in his quiet life. This was someone else. Someone who belonged with Cain, at least on the surface. The meeting was at an underground club. The music was loud, lights dim and pulsing, but when we entered, everything suddenly became quiet. People moved aside when they saw Cain, their eyes showing a mixture of respect and fear. We went into a private room where 2 other men were waiting, both heavily built, wearing expensive watches with intense expressions. "Who's this?" one asked, his eyes narrowing as he looked at me. "My fiancé," Cain said casually, sitting down in a chair. He made me sit beside him possessively. "Continue with your business. He's just observing." He placed my hand on the table deliberately, showing ownership. I swallowed hard and sat down. The meeting began. Territories, money, shipments, business deals. Everything was discussed as if it were a normal corporate meeting. I was just supposed to listen, but at one point a man challenged Cain. "Volkov, you stopped our shipment. This is against our deal. We already made the payment." Cain picked up his glass of water, took a sip, then slowly started drumming his fingers on the table, rhythmic, menacing. "You tried to double-cross me. The documents were forged. So I'm giving you a warning." He pointed at the man. "Next time, there won't be a warning. I'll take direct action." My heart stopped. I could see he was serious. There was no joke in his eyes. The man raised his hands and backed away, visibly nervous. All right, no problem. It was a misunderstanding. We'll fix it." The rest of the meeting proceeded with tense efficiency. Various deals were discussed, territories divided, percentages negotiated. I sat there feeling completely out of place, like an actor who had wandered onto the wrong stage. These men spoke in codes I barely understood: the shipment from the docks, the Eastern Territory arrangement, the judge who needs convincing. Each phrase hinted at a world operating beneath the surface of normal society, a world where Cain was clearly a king, One man, older than the others with gray streaking his temples, kept glancing at me with open curiosity. Finally he addressed Cain directly. I heard rumors about Elliot leaving. This one seems different. Younger, less arrogant. Randy is exactly what I need. Cain responded, his hand moving to rest on my shoulder. The touch was possessive, warm through my suit jacket, loyal, obedient, everything his brother wasn't. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. Being discussed like property, like some acquisition Cain had made, was humiliating, but I kept my mouth shut, remembering his warnings. Later, when we were in the car heading back, I asked Cain, would you really have killed him if he hadn't agreed? He looked at me, and for the first time, a real smile appeared on his lips. Dark, twisted, but honest. In business, there are no emotions, Randy, only consequences. If someone betrays me, I make an example of them. Simple. I realized what world I had entered, and this world wasn't going to let me go easily. The car ride back was long, giving me too much time to think. I watched Cain from the corner of my eye. He had returned to his phone, scrolling through messages with focused intensity. His profile was sharp in the passing streetlights. Strong nose, defined jaw, that scar that somehow made him more intimidating rather than less. I wondered what had happened to give him that mark. A fight? An assassination attempt? With someone like Cain, it could be anything. You're staring, he said without looking up. I'm trying to understand you, I replied honestly, trying to figure out who I'm supposed to spend my life with. He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Don't try to understand me, Randy. It'll only make this harder for both of us. Just follow the rules, play your part, and you'll be fine. And if I want more than just fine, the words escaped before I could stop them. Cain's jaw tightened. Then you're going to be disappointed. He turned back to his phone, effectively ending the conversation. When we arrived back at the estate, I went straight to my room, exhausted from the tension and fear. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I had witnessed. The casual violence, the power dynamics, the way people feared Cain with every fiber of their being. This was my life now. This was who I was tied to. A part of me wondered if Elliot had known exactly what he was running from. If he had understood the depth of darkness in Cain's world and decided it wasn't worth whatever benefits the marriage would bring. And if so, why hadn't he warned me? Why hadn't he fought harder to protect me from this fate? But I knew the answer. Elliot had always been selfish. He had always put himself first. And now I was paying the price for his cowardice. As I finally drifted toward sleep, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. They paused and I held my breath, wondering if Cain was standing there, if he would enter. But after a long moment, the footsteps continued on, fading into the distance. I released my breath, unsure whether I felt relieved or strangely disappointed. This was only the beginning. I realized, whatever came next, I would have to be stronger, smarter, more resilient than I'd ever been before. Because in Cain Volkov's world, weakness meant destruction, and I had no intention of being destroyed. One night I was sleeping in my room when suddenly there was a loud knock on my door. I jerked awake, my heart pounding. Who is it? The door opened, and Cain entered. But this time he looked different. His suit jacket was off, shirt sleeves rolled up, and his face had fresh scratches, probably from a fight. His breathing was slightly heavy, and there was a tension in his posture I had never seen before. A thin line of blood traced down from his temple, and his knuckles were bruised. What happened? I got out of bed and went to him instinctively. Are you okay? I'm fine, he said, gently pushing me back. But you won't be if you stay here. What do you mean? He gripped my shoulders firmly but not painfully. His fingers were warm through my thin sleep shirt. My enemies found out I'm marrying you. They attacked my convoy tonight. 3 cars, armed men, coordinated assaults. And now they'll target you. So you're staying with me. In my room, permanently. I was shocked, but you said separate rooms. Plans have changed. He took my hand and started leading me carefully. I did not resist, his grip was firm but protective. When we reached his room, he brought me inside and locked the door behind us. His room was dark, black sheets, minimal furniture, large windows with heavy curtains, and one wall had a safe with some important documents scattered on a desk. He walked toward the bathroom, removing his coat. "You sleep on the bed. I'll take the couch." "Cain, Randy." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something else in his eyes. Worry, fear. "I need to keep you safe. Whether you like it or not. Understand? I can't let anything happen to you." I slowly nodded, overwhelmed by his intensity. The room felt different from mine, more lived in despite its minimalism. There were small personal touches I had not expected: a worn book on the nightstand, reading glasses folded beside it, a framed photograph face down on the dresser. I wanted to look at it but did not dare. The air smelled faintly of his cologne mixed with something else. Leather and old paper. "Why do they want to hurt me?" I asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. The mattress was firmer than mine, the sheets cool silk beneath my fingers. "I'm nobody, just someone forced into this situation." Cain emerged from the bathroom, having washed the blood from his face. The scratches looked less severe now, just angry red lines along his cheekbone. He had changed into a plain black shirt, and without his suit armor, he looked younger somehow, more human. "Because hurting you hurts me. That's how this world works. You find someone's weakness and you exploit it." He grabbed a blanket from the closet and threw it on the couch. "I've made a lot of enemies, Randy. People who would love nothing more than to see me suffer. And I'm your weakness now," I said quietly. He stopped moving, his back to me. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I watched the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Yes," he finally admitted. "You are." The vulnerability in that single word shook me. This man who commanded fear and respect, who could end lives with a phone call, was standing here admitting I had power over him. That night, when he lay on the couch without a blanket, wearing just his shirt and dark pants, I watched him from the bed. He had rolled up his sleeves earlier, and I could see scars on his arms, old deep, each one telling a story. Some were thin lines, surgical and precise. Others were jagged, violent. He was so powerful, so dangerous. But here, in this moment, he seemed a little human, vulnerable even. Sleep did not come easily. Every small sound made me jump. Was someone breaking in? Were we under attack? I could hear Cain's breathing from the couch, steady and controlled, like he was trained to stay alert even while resting. The room was too quiet, the silence pressing down on me like a physical weight. Around 3 in the morning, I heard him move. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to sleep, but I could sense him standing near the bed. His presence was warm, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He stayed there for what felt like minutes, just watching. Then I felt a feather-like touch on my hair, so gentle I almost thought I imagined it. His fingers barely grazed my temple, tracing down to tuck a strand behind my ear. "I won't let them touch you," he whispered, so quietly I barely heard it. "I promise. Not while I'm breathing." Then he returned to the couch, and I lay there with my heart racing, realizing that something fundamental had shifted between us. This was not just about a business deal anymore. Somewhere along the way, without either of us planning it, this had become real. "Why aren't you sleeping?" he suddenly asked without looking at me. I quickly closed my eyes. I am sleeping." Liar. But there was no anger in his voice. Maybe there was even a hint of softness, something I had never heard from him before. "I can hear you thinking from here," he added after a pause. "Your breathing changes when you're awake. Gets faster, shallower." I opened my eyes and turned toward him. In the darkness, I could just make out his silhouette on the couch. He was lying on his back, one arm behind his head, staring at the ceiling. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of you. Of this whole situation. Of people I've never met wanting to hurt me because of a marriage I never chose." "Fear is smart," Cain replied. "Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. But trust me when I say this. As long as you're with me under my protection, no one will touch you. I've already doubled security. Every guard on this estate has been briefed. They know you're the priority." "Why?" The question slipped out. "Why do you care so much?" This was supposed to be just a transaction, a business arrangement to settle debts and maintain alliances. Another long silence. then because I've already lost someone I was supposed to protect. I'm not losing another. The weight of those words hung in the air between us. I wanted to ask more, to understand the pain behind that statement, but I could tell he had already revealed more than he intended. His voice had cracked slightly on the word another, a fracture in his usually perfect control. So instead, I simply said, "Thank you for protecting me." "Go to sleep, Randy," he said, his voice returning to its usual controlled tone. "Tomorrow will be difficult. We need to discuss security protocols and adjust your daily routine. No more wandering the estate alone." But despite his dismissive words, I noticed he shifted on the couch, so he was facing the bed, facing me. Like a guardian watching over something precious. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, reflecting what little moonlight filtered through the curtains. As exhaustion finally pulled me under, my last thought was that maybe, just maybe, this forced arrangement could become something neither of us expected. Something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. In the morning I would wake to find him still on the couch, still watching, having never slept at all. The next day, Cain had to leave for urgent business. He left me with his trusted guard, Cain. Cain was quiet, professional, and obviously loyal. He stood at attention near the door, a constant silent presence. "He doesn't leave the estate," Cain ordered Cain, his voice cold and authoritative, the voice of a boss, not the man who had whispered promises in the darkness. "And if anything suspicious happens, call me immediately." Then he looked at me, his eyes softening slightly. "Behave yourself, and if you need anything, ask Cain." I just nodded. When he left, I felt strangely alone despite Cain's presence nearby. The estate felt different during the day. Brighter, less threatening, but also more isolating. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. I wandered the halls, unsure what to do with myself. My laptop had been brought from my apartment, but I could not focus on design work. Every time I tried to open a project file, my mind would drift to Cain's scratches, to his whispered promise, to the scars on his arms. The house was enormous, with corridors that seemed to lead nowhere and rooms that held mysteries I was only beginning to uncover. I passed a music room with a grand piano covered in a white sheet, a gym with equipment that looked barely used, a greenhouse where exotic plants grew in careful rows. Eventually I found myself in an old library I had not noticed before. It was tucked away in the east wing, past several unused rooms with furniture draped in protective covers. The library smelled of old leather and aging paper, a comforting scent that reminded me of used bookstores I used to browse on weekends. Dust covered the shelves, and old books lined the walls in careful arrangement. On one shelf I discovered photo albums, their leather covers cracked with age and marked with years. Curiosity overwhelmed me. I opened the first album and found childhood photos of Cain. But he was not alone. Another boy was with him. Same age, same features, same smile. A twin. They wore matching outfits in some photos, different clothes in others, but they were always together, always smiling. I turned more pages. The photos gradually changed. First happy faces, birthday parties with matching cakes, Christmas mornings with identical presents wrapped in bright paper. Then slowly, subtly, sadness crept into the images. Fewer smiles, more formal poses, the boys standing stiffly beside stern-looking parents. And then, a funeral photo. The other boy was gone. Flowers everywhere, people in black, and Cain, maybe 16 years old, standing alone, his face completely blank, emotionless in a way that felt wrong for someone so young. His eyes were hollow, empty, like something vital had been carved out of him. "You should not have seen that." Cain's voice came from behind me. I spun around, almost dropping the album. He stood in the doorway, his face completely expressionless. But his eyes held deep pain. He was still in his business suit, having returned earlier than expected. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to invade your privacy." He gently took the album from my hands. His fingers brushed mine, warm and steady. This was my brother, Ethan. He was my twin. He placed the album back on the shelf, his back turned to me. His shoulders were rigid, defensive. "He died when we were 16. A rival gang, they targeted him. They wanted to kill me, but Ethan, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time." My heart sank. Cain, I'm so sorry. That's why I follow rules. That's why I don't do emotions. Because emotions, they're weaknesses. And weaknesses, and weaknesses, get you killed. He finally turned to face me and his eyes held a pain he was trying desperately to hide. So don't expect me to love you, Randy. I can't. I don't want what happened to Ethan to happen to you. I walked closer to him. Slowly, carefully. But you are protecting me, you moved me to your room. That's also an emotion. Caring. He said nothing. Just stared at me like he was processing my words for the first time. Like he was realizing that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to feel something. I reached out hesitantly and picked up the album again, opening it to a page where both boys were laughing, covered in what looked like paint. They were in a backyard, canvas propped up between them, their white shirts splattered with rainbow colors. Tell me about him, I said softly. Tell me about Ethan. Cain's jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he would refuse, would shut down completely and walk away. But then he reached out and touched the photograph, his finger tracing the outline of his brother's face with unexpected tenderness. He was everything I'm not, Cain began, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. Outgoing, funny, always making friends wherever we went. I was the serious one, the one who understood our father's business, who sat in on meetings while Ethan explored the city. Ethan just wanted to paint, to create art. He was talented too, really talented. Teachers said he could have been professional. Like someone else I know, I said gently, thinking of my own design work, my abandoned dreams. Cain's eyes flicked to mine and something flickered there. Recognition, maybe even connection. Yes, like you. He turned the page, showing a painting in the photograph. Abstract, beautiful, full of life and color that seemed to leap off the canvas even in the faded photo. This was his last piece. He finished it the day before. He could not finish the sentence. His voice caught, broke. What happened? I asked, even though I was afraid of the answer. We were supposed to go to a meeting with our father. Important business partners. Territorial negotiations. I got sick, just a stupid cold. Nothing serious. So Ethan went instead. He didn't even want to go. Complained the whole morning about missing his art class. But he went because I asked him to. His voice cracked slightly. The rivals had planted a bomb in the car. They thought I would be there, that they'd eliminate the heir who actually understood the business. Ethan died instantly. And I spent years blaming myself. If I had not been sick, if I had insisted on going despite the cold, if I had checked the car more carefully like I usually did. It wasn't your fault, I said firmly. You can't control everything, Cain. You were just a kid. I was old enough to know better. He shot back, anger flashing in his eyes, but it was anger directed at himself, not me. Self-hatred burned there. Years of accumulated guilt. I should have protected him. That was my job as the older twin. By 3 minutes, I guessed, remembering what he had said earlier. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, surprising us both. Too, actually, he never let me forget it either. Would introduce himself as the younger, better-looking Volkov twin just to annoy me. The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. After he died, I changed. I had to. My father needed an heir who was strong, unfeeling, capable of running the business without hesitation or mercy. So I became that person. I buried Ethan's memory, stopped painting, stopped doing anything that reminded me of him. I became exactly what the family needed, a weapon, not a person. But you kept the albums, I pointed out. I couldn't throw them away, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. They're all I have left of him. Sometimes I come here late at night and just look at them. Remember when things were simpler, when we were just two kids who didn't understand what our last name really meant. I closed the album carefully and set it down on the table beside us. Then, taking a risk, I reached out and took Cain's hand. He stiffened but did not pull away. His hand was larger than mine, calloused and marked with faint scars. Ethan wouldn't want you to stop living because he died. He'd want you to be happy, to find joy again. How would you know what he'd want? Cain asked, but there was no bite to his words. Just curiosity, and maybe a desperate hope that I was right. Because that's what any brother would want, I replied, and because I can see it in these photos, the way he looked at you, protective, proud, loving. He loved you. That kind of love doesn't demand sacrifice. It asks for healing. Cain looked at our joined hands, then back at my face. His eyes were wet now, tears threatening to spill. You're dangerous, Randy. You make me think about things I've spent years trying to forget. You make me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. Maybe it's time to remember, I suggested quietly. Maybe it's time to feel. He pulled his hand away, but gently, reluctantly. I need to check on some things. Cain will stay with you. Don't wander too far. He headed toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. And Randy? Thank you for listening. I haven't talked about Ethan in years, maybe a decade. No one else knows this story. After he left, I stood alone in the library, surrounded by dust and memories and the ghost of a boy who had been loved. Understanding Cain a little better. He was not just a cold mafia boss. He was a broken man who had lost half of himself and never learned how to heal. But maybe, just maybe, I could help him remember what it meant to be whole. 2 weeks later, our wedding day arrived. Everything felt surreal. I stood in a white suit that must have cost more than my entire wardrobe back home. Hands trembling slightly, and Cain faced me in black, his expression unreadable but his eyes focused on me. Intense, possessive, and something more. Something softer than I had ever seen before. The venue was the estate's grand ballroom, transformed with thousands of white roses and crystal decorations that caught the light. The guests were all from the underworld, dangerous, powerful people watching our every move with calculating eyes. I recognized some faces from news reports, others from whispered stories. These were not people you wanted at your wedding unless you had no choice. The priest spoke traditional vows, words about commitment and partnership that felt both hollow and profound. Do you, Cain Volkov, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer until death do you part? I do, Cain said, his voice steady and clear echoing through the silent ballroom. When the priest turned to me, I felt every eye in the room boring into my back. Do you, Randy Morrison, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer until death do you part? I looked at Cain, really looked at him, this man who had forced me into this arrangement, who had threatened my family, who had dragged me into his dark world, but also this man who protected me, who shared his deepest pain with me, who was trying so hard to be something other than the monster everyone expected. I do, I said and meant it. When the priest said, "You may kiss," Cain looked at me. For 1 second I could swear I saw hesitation in his eyes. Nervousness even. Then he leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on my cheek. Not my lips, my cheek. Respectful, tender, like I was something precious he was afraid to break. The crowd applauded. Some cheered, but my heart was pounding so hard I barely heard them. This was real. I was now Cain Volkov's husband. The reception was elaborate. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across marble floors. A 7-tier cake decorated with edible gold leaf. Champagne flowing freely from multiple bars stationed around the room. A string quartet played classical music in one corner while people mingled, their conversations hushed but intense. People approached us throughout the evening, offering congratulations that felt more like business acknowledgments than genuine well wishes. Congratulations on your union, they would say, but their eyes calculated what this marriage meant for alliances and territory. Who had gained power? Who had lost it? What did this mean for their own positions in the complicated web of underworld politics? Cain stayed close to me the entire time, his hand frequently on my lower back or shoulder, possessive gestures that announced ownership to everyone watching. I should have felt objectified, but instead I felt protected, like he was making it clear that I was under his shield now, that anyone who wanted to hurt me would have to go through him first. One older woman, dripping in diamonds that probably cost more than a house, approached us with a calculating smile. Her dress was designer, her makeup perfect, but her eyes were cold. "So this is the replacement," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I heard the first one ran away. Smart boy, that Elliot. Always did have good survival instincts. Before I could respond, Cain's hand tightened on my shoulder. Not painfully, but noticeably. "Careful, Natasha," he said, his voice dangerously soft. the kind of soft that preceded violence. Randy is not a replacement. He's an upgrade, and I suggest you remember that before you say something you'll regret. The woman's smile froze, then she nodded quickly and walked away, her heels clicking rapidly against the floor. I looked at Cain in surprise. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, he replied simply. You're mine now. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me, and disrespecting me has consequences. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. I met men who controlled shipping routes, women who ran money laundering operations through legitimate businesses, couples who smiled while discussing territory disputes. It was exhausting, playing this role, pretending I belonged in this world. Later that night, after all the guests had finally left and the staff had begun cleaning up, Cain and I stood on the balcony outside our room. The air was cool, stars clearly visible above us in the unpolluted countryside sky. And he was silent, leaning against the railing, lost in thought. The estate spread below us like a kingdom, lights twinkling in the darkness like earthbound stars. So, what now? I finally asked, standing beside him. My white suit jacket was draped over the railing between us. He turned to look at me, moonlight catching his features and softening them. Now you're my legal husband. The deal is complete. Your family is safe. You have no more threats hanging over you. And, what about you? What do you want now? He was quiet for a long time, like he was searching for the right words in a language he barely spoke. Then he released his grip on the railing and moved closer to me, hesitantly. I don't know, Randy. His voice was so low I barely heard it. For the first time in my life, I don't know what I should do, what I should feel. I've spent so many years following plans, executing strategies, that I forgot how to just be. My breath caught. He was so close I could feel his heartbeat fast, uneven, vulnerable. Then suddenly, he rested his forehead against my shoulder, his guard completely down. His weight against me was substantial, real grounding. You're making me weak, he whispered, his breath warm against my neck. And that's dangerous in my world. But I can't let you go. I tried. I told myself this was just business, just a transaction. But it's not anymore. I placed my hand on his back slowly, comfortingly, feeling the tension in his muscles. Maybe being a little weak is necessary, to feel alive, to be human. I chose my words carefully, knowing how important this moment was. Ethan's death was not your fault, Cain. You've punished yourself long enough. Maybe it's time to move on. Give me a chance. Give us a chance. He did not say anything. We just stood there, a mafia boss and his forced husband holding each other like if either let go, both would break. And that night, under the stars, I could feel something changing. The walls Cain had built around himself were slowly crumbling, brick by careful brick, and I realized that maybe this forced marriage could become something else, something real, something beautiful, something worth fighting for. Cain lifted his head, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. Just barely, but they were there, catching the moonlight. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know if I deserve you, but thank you for staying, for not running like your brother did. I smiled, my first genuine smile in this entire journey. I'm not going anywhere, Cain. I promise. He reached up and cupped my face with both hands, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone so dangerous. His palms were warm, slightly rough. I need you to understand something, he said seriously. This life, my life, it's not safe. There will always be enemies, always be threats. People will try to use you to hurt me. Are you sure you want this? Want me? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. I covered his hands with mine. I didn't choose this at first, but I'm choosing it now. I'm choosing you. With full knowledge of what that means, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, hope, fear, all mixed together in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. How to be soft, how to love someone without being terrified of losing them like I lost Ethan. Then we'll learn together, I said, one day at a time. No expectations, no pressure, just honesty. You show me your world and I'll show you mine. We'll meet in the middle. He pulled me into an embrace then, holding me tightly like I was something precious he was afraid would disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his heart racing against mine, and for the first time since this whole situation began, I felt like maybe everything would be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. Can I confess something? Cain murmured into my hair. Anything. That day when Elliot ran away and I came to your door, part of me was relieved. I had met you once before, at a family gathering months ago. You were in the corner sketching something in a notebook, completely oblivious to everyone around you, lost in your own world. And I thought you were the most genuine person I'd ever seen in this artificial world of ours. When I found out Elliot had a twin, I hoped. He trailed off. You hoped it would be me, I finished, pulling back to look at him. He nodded. Is that terrible? Does that make me a bad person? No, I said softly. It's honest. And that's all I want from you, honesty. I can handle honesty. What I can't handle is lies and pretense. He kissed my forehead then, a tender gesture that held more meaning than any passionate kiss could have. His lips lingered there, warm and soft. Then I'll be honest. I'm terrified. Terrified of caring about you. Terrified of what that makes me. How it makes me vulnerable. But even more terrified of pushing you away and ending up alone again. Then don't push me away, I said simply. Let me in. Let me see all of you, the good, the bad, the broken parts. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. As we stood there under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt the last of my resistance crumbling. This was not the life I had planned, not the future I had imagined for myself when I was designing logos and dreaming of a quiet, simple existence. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what I needed. And maybe Cain needed it too. Maybe we were two broken pieces that somehow fit together to make something whole. The night air grew cooler, but neither of us moved. We stayed there, two souls who had been forced together, finding unexpected solace in each other's presence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new complications. But tonight we had this moment of peace. This moment of possibility, and that was enough. For now it was more than enough.